So here we go. I am so excited to welcome our author this evening, Kathleen Klawitter. Just by being here, Kathleen is a triumphant proof of what a strong mind can do to heal the body if one is driven by a positive spirit. Kathleen is a professional speaker and author of this book we're talking about, Direct Hit, a golf pro's remarkable journey back from traumatic brain injury. You'll hear about that shortly. Now she's a resilience expert and visionary coach, where she teaches her trademark high five system, which we hope to hear about later in the program. She's trained in Paramahansa Yogananda breath movement, sound techniques, and Margot Anand Skydancing Tantra. She is certified first degree black belt in Blue Dragon Taekwondo, and she's affiliated with Toastmasters International, the National Speakers Association, the Ladies Professional Golf Association, USA Archery, and Jody House, a center for brain injury survivors. She has been featured in Palm Springs Life, Santa Barbara Family Life, and Speaker Magazine. Please welcome Kathleen Klawitter.
Thank you, Michael. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome. And joining Kathleen tonight and myself is Connie St. John. Connie is the founder and CEO of No Weapon Productions, NWP, and president of the St. John Consulting Group. She's also the creator of the Game Changers Experience, an innovative professional development program. Through both companies, Connie and her teams use entertainment and other experiential techniques to create life change for individuals, strengthen corporations and nonprofits, as well as to address social issues such as bullying, youth empowerment, and justice equality. Welcome from Washington, D.C., Connie St. John, and take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Kathleen, I am so honored to be here to talk with you this evening. This is such an exciting night because this is a homecoming for you. Is that right?
Yes, it's definitely a homecoming. And you know that song, I Left My Heart in San Francisco? Well, that's not me. I left my heart here in Santa Barbara. And that the head injury support and rehab programs here, they really put me back on course, so to say. And I've never really forgotten that. And I may have traveled out of state for over 20 years, but I always had longed to come back to the beloved ocean, to the many friends I made here, and for this support, this family that was built here so long ago. And speaking of Jody House, Michael had mentioned Jody House. I am now their ambassador. I sit on their board. So it is indeed a homecoming for me. And I'm like I said, I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, well, I know everyone is thrilled to be able to hear from you tonight. So your book, Direct Hit, is a powerful recount of your incident, the accident that happened, but it's also a really inspirational story of your rehabilitation and your resilience. Can you tell all of us about the accident? What happened?
Oof, yeah, I'm going to take you back about 20 years ago. And at that time, I was a cutting edge LPGA golf professional, and I was teaching the holistic approach to golf, which wasn't really happening at that time. And I had a ladies golf league up in Northern California. I was teaching a golf league. And I was merely walking from the parking lot over to the golf shop. And I was going to wave to some clients who were actually on the putting green. They were practicing their putting. And I thought, no, I better not. I'm going to see them on the links in just a few minutes. I'll let them concentrate and I'll just carry on. Well, I went ahead and took out a scorecard and I started writing names down on a card when something suddenly struck me right in the head. And it felt like a railroad tie had driven straight through my skull and out my left eye socket. And the pain was so excruciating that it felt like a bowling ball had landed on my head. And it was, in fact, an errant speeding golf ball. Well, the green grass and the asphalt were spinning, like a plate atop a long, thin stick. And knowing it would fall, knowing I would fall, was just a moment of time. And within seconds, darkness consumed me, and I fell to the ground. And in that instant, my life as I knew it was over. The golf career that I had was gone. The life that I knew and loved was shattered. My whole life just changed in an instant, and that was it. Now, I did hear sirens in that moment. I remember hearing sirens, and there was commotion, but I couldn't speak. And I was eventually taken to the hospital, and then after that, bizarre behavior started to happen. So,
oh my goodness, when you talk about it, I can see it. I can visualize it. The way you describe it, I can just see it in my mind's eye. And then of course your book illustrates it and talks about it as well. But so they diagnosed you with a traumatic brain injury, correct?
Yeah, yes. And here's the thing. I had some really good friends in Northern California where this happened, and they said, you've got to get down to Santa Barbara, California. There is a brilliant neuropsychologist down there, Dr. Cheryl Smith. And so they helped me pack up the studio that I was living in and get down there here. My goodness, get down here, yay. And I met with her, and she did some testing and evaluations. It was very extensive. In fact, the testing alone took me 3 or 4 months because I was so fresh with the injury, and I had cognitive issues and visual issues that prevented me from really even trying to move through the test. But she was able to corral the exact parts of the brain that were injured. And I also got a PET scan, and it showed, it's a colorful map of the brain, and you can actually see where parts of the brain were injured. That would be in red, where it no longer, the brain circuit no longer went there. It just was dead. So, but she was amazing in that she was able to really start to pull in the players that were needed. I mean, I had a cognitive therapist, I had a vision therapist, I had a speech therapist, I had an occupational therapist, and the blow was so hard that it crunched a vertebrae in my neck, and I had to have a surgery. And so I had to have framinotomy, I think they call it, but the whole left arm was weak, and I couldn't really use it. It would get exasperated. And so after that surgery, then I had physical therapy. So there was a host of modalities that had to be utilized as far as physical therapy to get me through.
Wow, you speak so highly of Dr. Cheryl Smith in your book too. I felt like I knew her, and she just seemed like she was your savior. She was just there in so many different ways and at so many different points. Can you talk about some of the symptoms, and did they happen all at once, or were they kind of, like you said, discovered over time?
They were, well, for me, because I was, how shall I say this? I was really unaware of being aware. I mean, because of the testing, she was able to identify really what was going on. But you asked about my behavior, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I would begin talking, and I might lose my train of thought. And if somebody said, well, did you lose your train of thought? I would start seeing this little choo-choo train go round and round.
Oh my goodness.
And I wasn't able to how shall I say, the frontal lobe was probably the biggest part of the brain that was affected. And that's your sequencing, your organizational skills, your executive functioning, your personality. And there was so many different characteristics just in the frontal lobe alone. Then there was the parietal, which, I said that correctly, parietal lobe, which affects the sense of touch, different sizes and shapes, and visual and spatial perception was huge for me, because sometimes when I would walk down steps, it all seemed to be on one level. So I was very unsteady on my feet. My equilibrium was also affected. And then the final place was the occipital lobe, which controls vision. And that was tough too. I mean, I started seeing, if I looked up at the moon, I would see two moons this way. I mean, it wasn't so bad, I guess, when I looked in the mirror, right? With me. But
here I am cheering myself on.
Yeah, somebody has to. So, but I really did start exhibiting some really bizarre behavior. I even tried to go teach golf, which was an absolute mistake. Sometimes I didn't even find myself there. I was double booking. I mean, I tried to go around the corner to vote, and I ended up out at the ocean. It was a very, very confusing time for me until I got with the support team here in Santa Barbara. And there was the whole rehabilitation team, the head injury rehabilitation team. They would actually come to my place, and we would work 2 or 3 times a week. I would work with each different therapist to move through some of these symptoms. So the neurological training was just, it was tops. It was primo. And I'll give you a quick example of that is the driving test. I had to do the adaptable driving test, driver's test here. They have a program for that. And that really started with just setting my alarm. And then, I mean, normally if you were, someone were to say, well, I'm going to go take my driver's test, well, you might get a pamphlet and you might study the written test. But for me, it took me years. I had to first do vision therapy because when you're in a car, you have to scan. And when I scanned, there would be this whole motion picture in slow motion that would catch up. And I would get nauseous and dizzy, and I would even dry heave. And so the way I had to start practicing it was with the vision therapist is get a mark, get a mark, get a mark, get a mark, and work on that for just 1 week. Then I would go even further, a mark, and then to the point where finally I could do that, and then in one full sweep. Well, it didn't end there because you can't just do that standing still. So I would practice in the grocery store, and I would walk down the aisles and try to spot slowly different items on the grocery store shelves. And then after that, then I could do, and this was really fun. I got to do course simulation with the training program that they offered. And it's kind of like being in a little video game, and you'd be in there and you'd simulate driving. And I remember one time they simulated rain, and then I saw 2 lights in the distance. I'm like, oh, what's that? And then as it got closer, I was like, oh, that's interesting. They're getting closer. And then it was like, oh my gosh, that's a car, you know? Then I'm coming to a stop sign, and I put on the brakes, and 4 to 7 seconds later, I would stop because I had delayed processing.
Right.
So this kind of training, this course simulator, I loved it, was invaluable because I got to make those kind of mistakes in a safe zone. And then finally was able to get out and practice driving in a parking lot like a teenager. And then the whole studying for the written test. And I think it was 3 or 4 years later where I finally actually went in and took my test, and I did really well, and I passed. And
I was going to say,
so
you
grateful.
passed it with flying colors. I mean, I'm thinking about, here you are, you know, homecoming back in Santa Barbara. And how did you get there? Did you drive?
Yes, I did. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. Yes, of course I did.
Oh my goodness.
I love to drive now, which, I mean, I love a road trip. I do enjoy flying, and though we're not really able to do that, but I do have a van and have everything in there that I need. And so, yes, I did drive to get here. That's a good point.
Yeah, yeah, and far.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I
just
did.
drive.
Yeah, I travel. I have been away for quite a while. I mean, I traveled to Indiana and North Carolina and South Dakota, and still ended up back here, even Northern California. So I'm back.
You're back. Oh, that's so wonderful. And just listening to you talk, Kathleen, I think what I'm struck by is how remarkable the body is. When you start to break down all of the different things you had to relearn and the tasks and the way you had to spend the time, it's amazing what the body does without thinking. And then to have to be more conscious of those things as you were going through your rehabilitation is amazing, because look at you now. You're doing all these amazing things, and it looks as though you never skipped a beat.
Yes,
It
it's
was a
true.
journey.
Yeah, I think if you put me in a lineup, I don't know that I'd be the one that they would choose who had the head injury, but it's not without, I wasn't always cheery. It wasn't always a yippee skippy kind of a road. I mean, it was quite challenging at times. And there's 2 points I want to make, so help me come back to this. But one is to address about the resilience of the body and the brain, and that's just it. I mean, through this process, I learned that the brain is magnificent and it's resilient and it's changeable. It is so changeable, and all it takes is a willingness, and of course, a really good support team, to help keep you on track. So there were some dark times, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start first with, like, you would think that grocery shopping is a pretty simple thing to do, but not when you've had a traumatic brain injury. And so the way I had to lay that out was I had to draw a map first of how to get there. So I had to learn how, the map and strategy, how to actually get to the grocery store. And then once I was in the grocery store, then I actually had to learn and map out where everything was. Because the way I would shop in the beginning was, and I had to have a safe zone, and safe zone is really important for me. I always have to know where there's a safe zone where I can go. So I would spot a safe zone, and then I would go and shop for the produce and come back to the safe zone and put those things in the cart. And then I would go to maybe, what do you call the poultry, the meats and all of that. And then I would come back. And then I would go to the canned goods, and then I would come back. And that's the way that I would shop, right? So pretty good plan. And so the first time I did this, my occupational therapist came by and she said, "Are you ready, Kathleen? Are you ready to go to the grocery store?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I've got my map and I've got my safe zone. I've already mapped out the store. I know exactly what I'm doing. I've got my grocery bags." So we're driving there, and I'm marking, because I still have to mark when I'm in the car. I have to mark like a telephone pole, white line on the road, just so I don't get sick, right? So we get to the store, and it's like unusually, like not crowded. I was like, wow, this is great. I'm going to be able to get in, get out. So we're walking up to the door, and on the door, there's this little bitty sign that says, "Closed for inventory today." And I'm like, no, no. I went berserk. I mean, the best laid plan, right? And I ended up, sitting back on the sidewalk and just bawling my eyes out. And my occupational therapist is just like, "Kathleen, it's okay, it's okay." And it's like, "No, it's not. You don't know how hard this was. I'll have to do this all over again." Blah blah blah. So rewind, to today. I mean, it's just a proof. I still a lot of times will hand map out places to go, but boy, GPS, that's really
It helps, doesn't
nice
it?
little thing that is. I'm starting to get used to that, but now it's easier. And when I go, I still had to relearn what is inside the store, and I really pretty much depend on that. But I don't have a safe zone in the store anymore, which is kind of fun.
You can just go all over. You can just go all over. That's really amazing. That's really amazing. Let's talk about the book a little bit.
Ooh, yeah.
Which I encourage everyone to buy and read, because it's so great. It's so great. You will be inspired. When did you start writing it? So tell me about your writing process.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because this was when I first was a golf professional. I was teaching the holistic approach. Like I said, that, I mean, nobody was really teaching that at that time. And we're talking about 1991. And so I started writing a holistic golf book for women. And I was about, I would say 2/3 done. And then I got hit, right? So that ended that. I mean, I even had a small time publisher up in Northern California who was ready to really, work with me and publish the book. And it all just went by the wayside in a New York minute. So when I was here in Santa Barbara and doing my rehabilitation, Dr. Smith encouraged me to do activities of high interest. Okay. So that was the night sky, which is another charming story. But she also said, you used to love to write. Let's write. She goes, at the Shot Center, Cork Milner. That might be a familiar name here in Santa Barbara. Loved that man. He was the writing professor, and I took his course 3 times. Now, as a head injured person, you have to overlearn to really learn something. So repetition is helpful. So finally on the 3rd one, he said, Kathleen, I would really like you to write about what happened. And he knew what he was doing. I'll tell you, I had no clue until later, but I went ahead and wrote what has now become the first chapter of the book. And at that time we had called it a prologue. Now this is quite a while ago. It's 20 years ago. Well, he had me sit down and he had me read it out loud. And I maybe got a paragraph in and I just started to cry. And he said, that's okay. That's why we're doing this. We're going to get you through this. And then he read the rest of the chapter. So that's what happened with that. Then I was like, okay, so I wrote a little bit more, but then after, I don't know, maybe it was a few more years, then I moved to Northern California because I was wanting to live in a more micro of the macro, meaning live in a smaller community that was a little more contained where I can develop my skills better. And it was up in Northern California where I was like, oh, what I really want to do something. And it was on leap year. Now my dad was born on leap year. He had passed the year before. And I was like, I would love to be a part of something big. And I really wanted to make a difference in the world. And how can I do this? And all of a sudden I hear this deep voice say, take a leap of faith, I can't even, my dad was much deeper, take a leap of faith, this voice. And he said, finish the book. I was just like, did you just say that? And I got right on it. I followed that very sacred lead. And within a few months, I had started the writing process again. Of course, all my notes were handwritten. Even when I submitted to Cork Miller, everything was handwritten. I'm not very computer savvy. So I forgot where I was. Sometimes this happens on the double Ferris wheel, it just goes that way.
I know, but it's okay because you've got us all enraptured. This is great. So you started writing, you heard your father's voice tell you to start writing.
Oh, yes.
To finish the book, and you started writing by hand.
Yes. And all these little pieces of paper, right? A really good friend offered to type everything into a computer for me. So we spent about a year. I brought all the tubs out from back in the golf days and all the things he had written and all the little pieces of paper and brown paper bags and anything that I had written on to help me remember. And she was the one who put it all in the book. So now I have some semblance of a manuscript. And then after that, it was a few years later then that I found this brilliant editor who is really more left brain, I should say, because she was able to say, okay, this goes over here and this goes over here. And then she would write me questions and I would just start answering them. And so her name is Barbara Paris. She was my editor. And she is the one who really pulled this together to really show the journey that I went on. Now it's all my words.
Right.
She was the one who actually helped really prompt that and pull it out of, extract everything out of my brain that she could and everything that I had on walls and everything else. So
I love that. I love that. What was it like for you when you read it for the first time?
Well, that's just it, Connie. I think about that question, but I've never been able to really sit down and read the whole thing. And the way it came about really was one chapter at a time. We would work at one chapter at a time. And I remember that I I really gave my all, and it's being in the present moment, which is one of the high five system principles, is just stay in the present moment and deepen into the moment. And so when I did that, I knew that if I gave 100% in each of those moments, that those moments would add up to a string of pearls, or in this case, chapters that were heartfelt, and they would blossom out to be this book. So no, I haven't been able to read it in one sitting. I've heard that it's a fast read. My mom just zipped through it. So of course, she gave it 5 stars. But I do read parts of it. And what's wonderful about having the book now is, sometimes I still, I can't remember, I forget. And then I'll read that and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. Yes, yes, yes. I remember that now. Or some of the things are just so touching.
Yeah.
And there's so many beautiful vignettes and stories. And it's just, and it's so inspirational. And it also goes into, the dark places too. Like I said, I wasn't always this bubbly during this transition. But I did during the rehab, but I really did keep a positive outlook. I always kept a positive outlook because I wanted to live. I mean, I love people too much. I love life too much. And to me, that's, and along with your health, that's everything. That's why we're here.
Yeah. It's hard for me to imagine you not as cheerful and bubbly as you are, because every time I talk to you, you lift my spirits. So it's like the natural Kathleen. That's who you are. I can't imagine you being any other way. You talked about the words in the book being beautiful, the stories being beautiful and poignant, of course. And I also noticed that the poetry in the book was beautiful. Beautiful. Do you still write poetry?
I don't. I don't write poetry anymore. It was a time where I think up until that point, I was really, how shall I say this? I was really studying women. I was women's studies, excuse me. And I was really writing a lot about Mother Earth and, the rhythms of the earth and how it matches our heart. And so yes, poetry was a beautiful thing at that time, similar to the sketching. I think.
Well, the sketches, the artwork in the book, that is, and I know some of them are actual images, but a lot of the artwork in the book is your artwork.
It's all my artwork, yeah. And here's the thing, I during those times, especially back here in the trailer, which was my haven. I'm so grateful to my landlord and being able to live in this beautiful garden. It is a paradise back here. And I had a small little trailer that I lived in, and I would not be able to really speak very well, and I wouldn't be able to express myself. I was such an independent woman before all this. And so I grabbed a pencil, a number 2 pencil one night, and a brown paper bag, and I started sketching. It's almost like pointillism. That was my style, but it was flared, like feather strokes. And that helped to relieve the anxiety. I got to express what was inside of me. And when I was done with that, and I stayed with it, the focus was incredible because I lost track of time. I was always losing track of time. But in this instance, it was wonderful because by the time I was done, I had this woman with a beautiful butterfly coming out of her heart. Yeah. So that was one of them. And another one I'd love to share is the one that I remember being kind of angry, and it's like, I can't express this. And so what I drew was the Scarecrow. I had lost my thinking cap. I couldn't think. And so I drew the Scarecrow, and I drew, I think, a watch because from the Tin Man, the heart watch, because I couldn't even draw a clock. I couldn't even find the numbers of the clock. And then a balloon, like the hot air balloon, so I could get away. And I was all done, and it took me several nights. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's really good. I said, but it doesn't depict who I am. It just doesn't depict who I am. So I I took a pair of scissors and I cut it all up. Oh, I cut it up, cut it up, cut it up. And then with Elmer's glue, white glue, I got a poster board and I pasted it all back on the board. And then I stood back like, that's who I am. That's how fragmented I was. That's how shattered my brain was. That's how shattered my life was. And you know, when you're viewing life like through a dark tunnel, that's how I felt like I was in a dark tunnel, hanging upside down like in a water chamber, like Houdini. You know, that's what it felt like. It was really hard to focus, but things like this, it helped me. The sketching helped me.
Yeah.
And now I have like 20 or 25 sketches that I look back on and I'm like, oh my gosh, who did this?
Right. I'm great.
It was
Seriously, the artwork is amazing. And I love that even through that time, that you may not have been able to express yourself in words, but your creativity found its way out. And it's through the artwork, which is just beautiful. And so, I mean, that alone, I want a Kathleen Klawitter sketch. I want one. I want to.
okay. Maybe I'll do a little card series.
Yeah, seriously. Oh my gosh, that would be brilliant. That would be brilliant.
You know, Connie, you mentioned something about like, it's really about like when one of the senses go away. And I really learned that being back here on the property, because I was in nature. And what was taken away, you know, was the capacity to think. And even my capacity to really see very well. Sometimes I would walk with my eyes half closed. But then something really magical happened, is that when I would walk on the earth, I really started to feel the earth. My feet would move with the earth as I walked, and I felt the rocks or the sand or the dirt. And it was like the earth was meeting my every step. And I felt so supported.
Wow.
You know? And then, I mean, the nature was also a healer. I mean, I had this little hummingbird. I had jasmine there's jasmine that's in full bloom right now. I actually went out there just before I got on and smelled the jasmine and remembered what it was like to be here so many years ago. And I smelled it. It was smelling one day when I came back and from walking to my appointments because I couldn't drive. Well, anyway, this little hummer shows up and it was all of a sudden just right in front of my face. It was so close that I was like, wow, you know, bright ruby throat, green wings, translucent wings. It was like, whew. And then all of a sudden it does this reverse 4 turns, boom, 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 and landed on the lattice and looked at me, you know, like, and then tucked its feathers in. And I'm like, huh. And I thought, you know what? Maybe this little hummer was showing me that it was okay to rewind and to start again. Because life is filled with that right now. It's filled with birth, it's filled with death, and it's filled with rebirth. And you know, we talk about the times right now of chaos, uncertainty, change, but we've always had change. We have the seasons, we have the cycles of the moons. There's so many different aspects of that, and so just to accept and go with, yes, we can easily rewind and start again. I love that kind of teaching because it involved the parts of the brain that weren't injured for me. But here's one more exciting thing about the brain that I'd love to share. And that is remember when I said that on that beautiful PET scan of the brain that there was a red color where it was injured. But here's the magnificent part of the brain. It's got such capacity and complexity, is that if you work at something long enough, that the brain starts to reroute itself.
Yes.
Until it finally does, and then you get it. And that's exactly what happened like in my vision therapy. I mean, I had a vision therapist who was showing me how to shoot cue balls
Yes.
at a pool table, right? And although, I mean, that was really challenging. I don't know how much time we have, but that was incredibly challenging. And I really would have to stop and get nauseous and sick. But I made it through that, despite some dark hours. But I made it through that, and it rerouted. And eventually, I mean, I was wearing, what do you call those? Spectrum glasses for a while. For the first year, I was wearing spectrum glasses. You know what? I didn't have to wear them after that because I had recircuited the brain and reprogrammed the brain. So, to remember that, even for me, anytime I'm in a situation, it's like, it's temporary. I mean, it may be turned, well, you've got a permanent injury, but you know what? It's just going to be a little bit different.
Right.
It's going to be a little bit different. And the part that was really bad is just temporary. And now I've learned to let go. I learned a long time ago to let go of the old Kathleen and really embrace and embody, the Kathleen that I am today. And there's so much of me still in there. So
yes. you were such a light, and like I said, so joyful and inspirational. I like that you talked about your connection with nature and how that brought you kind of a connection and joy and peace after the accident. How did you process forgiveness after the accident?
Oof, that is a good question, Connie, because as you probably well know, forgiveness is a part of the journey. It is a next logical step that you really do need to take, because otherwise you pretty much stay stuck in the emotion of all of that. There's so much that happened. I mean, I had to forgive the gentleman who hit the ball because he had been drinking. I had a really interesting experience, though. I was doing my Skydancing Tantra in France, and we were doing a meditation. And it was very interesting because in this meditation, all of a sudden, this golf ball comes, almost like the hummingbird, right?
Wow.
So here is this golf ball, right, shimmering in front of me. And I'm like, how dare you? The audacity, you come back to haunt me. And in that, yeah, right. I have black belt. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's a good thing I was in meditation, because I probably would have tried to swat it. But so I had this conversation with this ball. I'm not kidding. And in the end, by the time it was all said and done, I actually forgave the golf ball.
Wow.
I forgave the golf ball. And then it kind of zoomed out of the convention center where I was, kind of like Harry Potter's, the snitch.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking around like, did anybody see that? Or is it just me? So, but that kind of forgiveness is, like I said, it's something, it's like the next logical step, because then when I went out onto the golf course, then, the first time that I tried to go out on a golf course, oh my gosh, forget it. Even when I swung the club, I hit the back of the earth. And any golfer who knows, when you hit a big divot behind the golf ball, forget it.
Right. I've seen it in cartoons.
Yeah. You could have done a really good one. But but what later on, though, like especially after I did this forgiveness exercise, is that when I went out onto the course to try again, I didn't have that feeling of, am I going to get hit? Or looking at the golf ball and maybe having a flashback. So it's always good to forgive objects, experiences, people. And there was a lot of forgiveness in people and the things that had transpired during that journey. But like I said, it's just the next logical step, and you're doing it more for yourself, even if the other person or the other thing was, wrong, so to say. You're really doing it so that you can keep your positive motion forward.
Yeah.
I know about forgiveness. I get that. So once you forgave the golf ball, is that when you went back out to try to play golf again? Do you still try to play golf, or have you taken up something else?
Well, okay, so yes, I did try a few times more, and I actually did get in, I think 9 holes one time. And there was one particular time, it was just a few years ago, I took out my favorite persimmon 7-wood, and I just creamed it, and it went its usual 190 yards, and I just watched it. And I remember the head pro was out there watching because I was actually working at this country club. And he said, "Where'd that come from?" I said, "Still in there." It
That's
took a
right.
while, still in there. But so there was a second part to that.
Have you taken up
So
something else?
yeah, so I don't, I've really let that go because it's not as fun as it used to be. You know, in the beginning it was fulfilling and I enjoyed it, and now it's a little bit different. I don't enjoy it as much, but and this was another recommendation by Dr. Cheryl Smith was, hey, what about archery? And I was like, yes, I love archery because I so identify with the goddess Artemis, you know, the protector of the forest, and who is a woman who's whole into herself and strong. And I relied on her. And so when I was able, I started to take lessons in archery. And then I became certified, and I'm currently a level 2 certified archer.
Oh, that's so
So,
cool.
yeah. But see, the thing is, you know, like with golf, there's 14 different clubs. There's one swing, kind of. Depends on your day and what hurts or ails you. And then
Right.
there's the weather, who you're playing with. I mean, there's so many different variables, but with archery, there's one stance, there's one target, there's one bow, and there's one arrow.
Wow.
And one really good result. So, so I love that. In fact, I've entertained the idea of competing at least once in an open shoot. I would love to do that. I have a recurve bow.
That would be so cool. Okay, let me know when you do that because I want to see you.
Yes, I enjoy that. Oh,
Oh,
there's
look.
my arrow making yogini. Yeah, that's my version of the arrow. That's one of my sketches.
It's
Wow,
one of your
Michael,
sketches.
you're
Thank
on
you,
there.
Michael. That's so awesome. So Michael asked or mentioned at the beginning of this when he was introducing you, he talked about your high five system.
Oh yes, yes. It's something that I taught in the golfing days. It was something that I created, and I'll just quickly go through the first phase. The first phase really is about a routine to anchor the things that you want or the things that you desire into like the new habit. So I didn't explain that well, but I hope you all get the idea that it's a new routine that overlays the other habit. So the second thing is to stay focused, or excuse me, to stay in the present moment. And when I say present moment, I really mean kind of deepen into that moment, similar to how I had to do with the book and listening to people talk. It's that kind of focus and that kind of presence, so that you don't miss a thing, you know, that person in front of you is saying, and can respond appropriately. And if you play golf or doing other things, it's like you're not really thinking about the past, and you're not thinking about the future, but you're just right here, right now. And then the third is to focus on exactly what you desire. I mean, there's so many distractions in the world right now, and it's easy to be thrown off the tilter wheel. You know, it's like, ding, answer your text. Ding,
Right.
answer your text. I mean, this is like this big Pavlovian response.
Wow.
So yeah, I was like, so really hone in and stay focused on exactly what you desire. And then the fourth thing is to believe in yourself more than anything in the world. And like I said, I've said this many times before, but gosh, if I believed everything every doctor had told me, I think I would have been dead 3 times over. I mean,
Mhm.
I've shared with people that I would have had I'd be wearing a colostomy bag right now if I believed that. And so you really have got to believe in yourself more than anything in the world, and do not believe in appearances or the appearance of things. And then finally is to give yourself some good old TLC. And I've changed it up a bit to self-trust, self-love, and self-care.
Mm.
So that's the high five system. As I knew it then, I was teaching this to my golf team, where we won state championship. We were undefeated. My clients loved it. Like I said, it was cutting edge at the time. And now I actually utilize that in my keynote speeches, which is more present day, but the vehicle doesn't matter. I mean, it
That's
could be,
right.
this approach works well with anything.
Yeah, it's applicable. I'm taking notes over here. So um,
I know you were a golf pro and you were an instructor. Do people still come up to you and say, hey, Kathleen, can you help me with my golf swing? And if they do, what do you say to them?
Yeah, you know, I'm like I said, I love people, and I really do. I have a big heart, and a lot of times I'll go ahead and say, yeah, you know, well, what's happening, maybe in that moment, and if there's something that I can share with them that would help them in the moment, then yes, I do. But I have really moved on from being that golf coach to really being now the author and the keynote speaker. I love the interaction with the audiences. In fact, last year in January, when my book was released, I was down in Naples, Florida, and I gave my first live speaking gig, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun being, you know, with the people and interacting and moving through that. And then I was able to go to the Barnes and Noble down there and present and do a book signing. And then, kabam, you know, COVID hit, and that just shut down everything. And so, with a great year of regrouping, rewinding, being with an executive coaching group and 2 sprint writing groups now. You know, for somebody who couldn't really write that well before and who couldn't speak that well before, now I'm in 2 writing sprints, and I'm really, after this year of practice and regroup, it's time. You know, it's time to get back out there and speak again. So I'm really looking forward to that.
well, I can see why you were the ambassador for the Jody House. I can see that. You embody that. You've inspired me, and I'm sure everyone who's watching this, you've inspired us so much. What would you say? What would your words of advice be, or your thoughts to people who are dealing with physical or even emotional trauma? What words of advice would you give them?
I would say a couple of things. I mean, really to really be patient with yourself, and the people who are your supporters, you know, that have them be patient with you as well. And be easy on yourself, and know that this is just, it's temporary. It really is just temporary. I mean, I found myself saying, and this is what I'm doing now. And this is what I'm doing now. I mean, there wasn't a judgment of, I can't do this. There wasn't an expectation. It was just, this is what I'm doing now, and I'm doing it the best I can. And so when you move forward in that way, then you progress naturally out of, you know, that dark hole. And to use Dr. Smith's words, I mean, she would always look at me and she said, "It's okay, Kathleen. You'll get there. You'll get there." And I believe that, and I believe that today too. I mean, with any endeavor that I have, I'll get there. I mean,
You'll get there. You'll
and
get
so
there.
and so will, yeah, well, other people. I mean, this
Mhm.
question was directed towards them, and you will get there. I mean, the answers will come, and the direction will unfold beautifully for you. It really will. Just have that kind of positivity bias on there. Kind of expect the best to get the best. Of course, embracing. You always want to embrace what you're going through, and many people are going through the stages of loss right now. So really embrace that, and then develop that, you know, positivity. Like, hey, you know, you'll get there.
I love that. And speaking of that, embracing it, we have a question from someone who is watching, and from Thomas. He said, "Do you get the feeling that this was meant to happen to you so you can share this incredible story?"
I don't know about, you know, to share the incredible story, but I really have viewed it as a blessing. My belief system says that, you know, divine order is always happening in my life, no matter what challenge presents itself. So I guess in answer to Thomas's question is yes. I mean, now, yes, in hindsight, it's like, yes, because this gives me the perfect platform from which to speak.
Right.
I've lived this. I've experienced this. I am human proof that you can live a good quality of life, no matter what obstacle, no matter what challenge hits you.
Wow. Yeah. And it's always easier to say that in hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have a second question, and hopefully I'll say it right, Kathleen. You can correct me if I get it wrong. What is Yogananda breath and how does it work?
Ooh, well, it's kind of a long topic, but you can certainly Google Paramahansa Yogananda self-realization techniques. It is a whole training session. It was Paramahansa Yogananda who actually brought over some of the Eastern philosophies from the East. And I use a lot of breath, movement, and sound to exercises and techniques to move through the moment and whatever you need to move through. I mean, if you're angry, breath, movement, and sound helps. If you're sad, breath, movement, and sound helps. So I would definitely Google Paramahansa Yogananda self-realization. And I did those trainings for 3 or 4 years. We've got a very good program.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm gonna just put P Yogananda because I don't know how to spell that first word. But we talked about this being a homecoming for you, Kathleen. So do you have anything that you want to share with your friends in Santa Barbara? Now, what would you like to say to them?
Well, it's so very good to be back home again. And I really look forward to giving back in many ways and perhaps seeing my friends and many other people out on the trails, out on the beach, under the stars. It's getting a little verklempt.
I know. It must be, I mean, after 20 years, you're back and this is where your healing journey began and
Yes.
you're here again.
Yeah, but this is the fun part for me. Like I said, I love life and I love people and the family that I have here now. It's really time to celebrate, and
Yeah.
that's what I want to share with my friends and with people here in Santa Barbara and with all of you. It's time to celebrate the good things in our lives, and yeah, that's
I
what
love that. I love that. It's time to celebrate. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you so much for talking tonight. This has been so wonderful. Did you enjoy it, Michael?
I did very much. You both are great together. You got great chemistry. Yeah, thank you, Connie, for bringing the words out of Kathleen. And Kathleen, don't be a stranger. Keep coming by, and I think we need more books. So,
Yes, okay. I would love to come down for a book signing maybe. That would be wonderful.
so please, everyone, buy Direct Hits. Oh, Connie's got hers too.
Ah! And I have mine.
It's the book to have.
Well, thank you both for joining us. And everyone, thank you for logging on. And tell your friends, this will be available on YouTube by tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Michael. Thank you, Connie. This
I
is
just love you.
a delight. Thank you.
Thank you for being my
Thank
inspiration.
you. Good night.
Good night.